The metallic corridors of the Meridian Fleet's flagship echoed with the steady footsteps of Commander Vex. His tall, slender frame cast long shadows under the bright overhead lights as he made his way to the detention center. Behind him, two junior officers followed, their data tablets ready to record another routine interrogation. The prisoner they were about to question had been captured during a standard patrol near the Orion Arm, a human cargo pilot whose ship had drifted too close to Meridian space. Such incidents usually ended with a stern warning and deportation, but something about this human's cargo manifest had caught Vex's attention. The detention cell door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Jack sat on a simple bench, his orange cargo pilot uniform wrinkled but clean. Unlike most captured humans, he showed no signs of fear or anger. Instead, he looked bored. "Stand for Commander Vex," one of the junior officers ordered. Jack stood slowly, stretching as if waking from a nap. "Good morning, afternoon, or whatever time it is here," he said with a slight smile. Vex's four eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of curiosity among his species. The commander moved closer, towering over the human. His silver skin reflected the cell's harsh lighting. "Your cargo manifest lists cooking equipment and food supplies," Vex stated, his universal translator converting his clicks and whistles into English. "Explain their purpose." Jack shrugged. "I'm a supply runner for the outer colonies. They need food same as anyone else, though I do carry some special items, real earth spices, actual wood for smoking meat, that sort of thing." The junior officers exchanged confused looks when Commander Vex remained silent for a full minute. They had expected the usual questions about human military positions or trade routes. Instead, their commander did something unprecedented. "Show me," Vex said. "Show you what?" Jack asked, puzzled. "Show me how humans cook. I have studied your species for many cycles. You are the only known civilization that transforms nutrition into an art form. You call it barbecue. I wish to understand this concept." The junior officers nearly dropped their tablets. One of them stepped forward. "Commander, protocol states." Vex raised one of his four hands, silencing the officer. "Protocol also states that understanding potential allies or enemies requires cultural knowledge. This human will demonstrate their cooking rituals." Jack's eyes widened. Of all the possible outcomes he had imagined for his captivity, becoming an alien cooking instructor hadn't been one of them. "I'll need equipment, ingredients," he said cautiously. "Make a list," Vex replied. "Within reason, you will be provided what you need. But know this, any attempt to create weapons or communication devices will result in immediate termination." "Fair enough," Jack nodded. "Though I have to ask, why cooking? Why not ask about our weapons, our weaknesses?" Vex moved to the cell's small window, looking out at the stars. "In my studies, I noticed that humans gather around food. You make peace over meals. You celebrate with feasts. You comfort each other with warm drinks and shared plates. No other species we've encountered does this. It is intriguing." Jack couldn't help but smile. "You're not wrong there. Some of the best deals I've made were over a good meal." "Then we shall begin. Officer Trell, escort the human to Cargo Bay 3. Clear it for this experiment. Officer Mox, acquire the items he lists." Vex turned back to Jack. "You have 3 Earth hours to demonstrate this barbecue. Make them count." As Jack was led from his cell, he heard Commander Vex mutter something his translator didn't catch. The junior officers, however, understood their commander perfectly. In their native language, he had said, "Perhaps there are better ways to understand our galactic neighbors than through interrogation rooms and weapon scans." The simple order to cook a meal was about to change more than just one human's fate. As Jack walked down the corridor, already planning his impromptu alien barbecue, neither he nor Commander Vex could have predicted how this unusual command would reshape relations between their species. But that was how many great changes in history started, with one simple, unexpected order. Cargo Bay 3 of the Meridian flagship transformed under Jack's direction. The vast space, usually filled with supply crates and spare parts, now housed what had to be the strangest kitchen in human or alien history. "The heat source needs to be here," Jack explained, pointing to a clear area near the bay's ventilation system. The alien crew members watched with a mixture of confusion and interest as he arranged his makeshift cooking station. Officer Trell consulted his tablet. "The items you requested have arrived. Though I must say, the commander's approval of real wood for burning was unexpected." Jack grinned as he inspected the small stack of oak wood. "Can't have proper barbecue without smoke. Now let's see what else we got to work with." The supplies were a curious mix of human and alien equipment. Standard ship heating elements would serve as his grill base. Metal storage containers, cleaned and cut in half, would become his smokers. The meat. Well, it wasn't exactly beef or pork, but the synthetic proteins the aliens used for nutrition would have to do. As Jack worked, more crew members drifted into the cargo bay. They maintained what they thought was a subtle distance, but their curiosity was obvious. Even their antennae twitched in sync with Jack's movements. First rule of cooking, Jack announced to his growing audience, his preparation. He began arranging his tools and ingredients with the precision of a surgeon. The aliens watched in fascination as he mixed spices, their enhanced sense of smell picking up every subtle change in the aromatics. Commander Vex stood at the back of the growing crowd, observing silently. His 4 eyes tracked every movement, every decision Jack made. The human was definitely in his element, showing none of the fear or uncertainty typical of prisoners. "This is how we make a dry rub," Jack explained, mixing various spices in a bowl. "Every cook has their own secret recipe. Mine came from my grandfather." He paused, looking at the alien spices he'd been given. "Though I guess today we're making an interstellar version." Officer Mox moved closer, her scales shifting color with excitement. "Your grandfather. You inherit food preparation techniques through family lines." "Some of us do," Jack nodded, beginning to apply the rub to the synthetic protein. "Cooking is part of our history, our culture. Every family has their own traditions, their own special dishes." The aliens murmured among themselves. The concept of food as more than simple nutrition was foreign to them. Their own sustenance came in standardized portions, designed for maximum efficiency. As Jack worked, he continued explaining each step. The aliens recorded everything, treating his casual cooking demonstration with the seriousness of a scientific expedition. When he finally lit the wood, and the first wisps of smoke began to curl through the cargo bay, several aliens stepped back in alarm. "Don't worry," Jack reassured them. "This is the good part. The smoke adds flavor, makes the food taste better." "Taste better?" Officer Trell seemed puzzled. "Food is fuel. How can fuel taste better or worse?" Jack placed the seasoned protein on his makeshift grill. "Oh, you're in for a surprise. Humans figured out a long time ago that food can be more than just fuel. It can be an experience." The sizzle of meat on the hot grill filled the cargo bay. The smoke, carrying the scent of oak and spices, drifted through the ventilation system. Throughout the ship, aliens paused in their duties, their sensitive noses picking up unfamiliar but strangely appealing aromas. Commander Vex moved forward finally, standing beside Jack at the grill. "You seem very comfortable for a prisoner," he observed. Jack flipped the meat with improvised tongs. "Well, Commander, when you've been a cargo pilot as long as I have, you learn to make yourself at home anywhere. Besides," he gestured to the gathered crowd of fascinated aliens, "looks like I've got the most interested audience of my cooking career." The commander's antennae twitched in what might have been amusement. "Indeed. Though I suspect this demonstration will have consequences neither of us can predict." Jack just smiled, focusing on his cooking. He had no way of knowing that his impromptu cooking class was about to change the course of human-alien relations forever. The aroma of Jack's cooking spread through the Meridian flagship like an invisible wave. The ship's efficient ventilation system, designed to maintain optimal atmospheric conditions, now carried the unfamiliar sense of smoke and spices to every deck and corridor. In the medical bay, Dr. Rill looked up from her specimens, her antennae quivering. "What is that strange sensation?" she wondered aloud. Her assistant, bent over a microscope, had already abandoned his work, nose turned toward the air vent. Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Pack stopped calibrating the quantum drive. For the first time in his 30 years of service, the usually focused alien found himself distracted. The scent triggered something primitive in his brain, something his species hadn't experienced in generations. "The smell. It makes my stomach feel empty," one of his engineers said, sounding confused. "But I completed my nutrition cycle 2 hours ago." Back in Cargo Bay 3, Jack tended to his makeshift grill with the care of an artist. The crowd of alien observers had grown larger, and their reactions were becoming more pronounced. Their natural silver skin began showing hints of gold, a sign of emotional response in their species. Commander Vex noticed the change in his crew. "Explain this reaction," he demanded, though his own antennae were twitching rapidly. Jack lifted the lid of his smoker, releasing another wave of fragrant smoke. "Humans call this making your mouth water," he explained. "The smell of good food cooking triggers physical responses, makes us hungry, even if we've already eaten." Officer Trell, who had been taking notes, suddenly dropped his tablet. His 4 eyes widened as Jack basted the meat with a sauce he created from alien ingredients. "I feel memories," he said, sounding shocked. "But they're not my memories. They're nothing I've experienced." "Genetic memory," Dr. Rill announced, having abandoned her medical bay to investigate the source of the strange sensations. "Our species evolved from creatures who cooked their food over fire. We lost the practice as we advanced, but the memory remained buried in our DNA." The aliens closest to the grill began swaying slightly, their antennae moving in sync. The gold tint to their skin deepened. Some closed their eyes, lost in sensations their species hadn't experienced in millennia. "Ready for the first taste?" Jack asked, cutting a small piece of the grilled meat. The aliens watched intently as he placed samples on small plates, another concept foreign to them, as they usually consumed their nutrition directly from dispensers. Commander Vex stepped forward first, his role as leader demanding he take the initial risk. He lifted the morsel with surprising delicacy. The entire cargo bay fell silent. The commander's 4 eyes closed as he tasted the food. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, his skin shifted from silver to deep gold, and a sound emerged from him that none of his crew had ever heard before, something close to a hum of pleasure. "This," Vex seemed to struggle for words, "this creates feelings, not just sustenance, but emotions." One by one, other aliens tried the food. Each reacted differently. Some stood perfectly still, overwhelmed by the sensations, while others made soft sounds of surprise and delight. Dr. Rill frantically recorded their responses on her medical tablet. "Our species has been consuming nutrition paste for so long," she said, her own skin now glowing gold. "We forgot food could be more than just fuel. This is affecting our brain chemistry in fascinating ways." Jack watched it all with a growing sense of amazement. He'd cooked for plenty of humans before, seen the way good food could change moods and bring people together. But this was different. He was watching an entire species rediscover something they'd lost ages ago. "You know," he said to Commander Vex, "on Earth, we have a saying. The way to someone's heart is through their stomach." The commander turned all 4 eyes on him. "I begin to understand why your species values this practice so highly. It is not just about nutrition. It is about connection." As if to prove his point, the aliens in the cargo bay had begun to group together, sharing their experiences, comparing reactions. The usual rigid military discipline had given way to something warmer, more communal. The scent of barbecue continued to drift through the ship, awakening ancient memories, and creating new ones with every passing moment. What had started as a simple cooking demonstration transformed into something unprecedented in Meridian Fleet history. The cargo bay, filled with the lingering aroma of smoke and spices, became the setting for an impromptu feast that would change everything. "We must share this experience with the other shifts," Commander Vex announced, his golden-tinted skin still glowing from the effects of the meal. "Officer Trell, notify the off-duty crews." Jack found himself cooking more food as new groups of aliens arrived. The sight was remarkable. Senior officers sat with maintenance workers, scientists mingled with security personnel. The usual strict hierarchy of the ship seemed to dissolve in the presence of shared food. "In my 15 cycles of service," Officer Mox said, watching the scene with wonder, "I have never seen the crew gather like this without a formal ceremony." An elderly alien engineer approached Jack's cooking station, moving with careful steps. "I am Technician First Class Lon," he introduced himself. I have brought something." From his uniform, he produced a small container filled with glowing blue crystals. "These are rare flavor crystals from my homeworld," Lon explained. "We used them in ancient times, before standardized nutrition. They have been in my family for generations. I never understood their purpose until now." Jack accepted the crystals with appropriate reverence. He studied them briefly, then sprinkled a few over the cooking meat. The result was immediate. The blue crystals melted, creating swirls of luminescent sauce that filled the air with a sweet, otherworldly scent. "Now that," Jack grinned, "is what I call fusion cuisine." More aliens began coming forward, bringing their own traditional ingredients, items they'd kept as cultural artifacts, never really understanding their original purpose. Each addition to Jack's cooking created new flavors, new experiences, new connections. Commander Vex observed it all with growing interest. "Tell me, Jack," he said, "is this common among humans? This sharing of food?" "As common as breathing," Jack replied, expertly flipping another piece of meat. "Every culture on Earth has its own food traditions, but they all share one thing: bringing people together over a meal." Dr. Rill, who hadn't left her observation post, spoke up. "The biochemical reactions in the crew are fascinating. The combination of flavors, smells, and social interaction is triggering pleasure centers in our brains that have been dormant for generations." A young maintenance worker, emboldened by the unusual atmosphere, approached Commander Vex. "Sir, I have something to share as well." He presented a small vial of red powder. "My great-grandmother said it was once used in victory celebrations." Instead of reprimanding the worker for such informal behavior, Vex nodded approvingly. The powder was added to the next batch of food, and soon the cargo bay filled with appreciative hums and clicks. "You see," Jack said as he worked, "this is what humans call breaking bread together. It means sharing food and making connections. Some of our most important decisions and agreements happened over meals." Commander Vex's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "Perhaps our species has been approaching diplomacy incorrectly all this time. We focused on formal protocols and power displays, when we should have been sharing meals." The feast continued, with crew members coming and going as their duties allowed. The rigid silence typical of the Meridian ship was replaced by conversation, and even occasional laughter-like sounds. Aliens who had worked together for years without exchanging more than official communications found themselves sharing stories and memories. "Your cooking has done more than feed us," Vex observed as the gathering continued. "It has reminded us of something we lost in our pursuit of efficiency." Jack looked around at the transformed cargo bay, at aliens of different ranks and jobs sitting together, sharing food and stories, their silver skin tinted with the gold of emotional engagement. "Sometimes," he said, seasoning another batch of meat, "the simplest things are the most powerful. Humans figured that out a long time ago. Good food, good company, it's a universal language." The impromptu feast would continue for hours, but its effects would last much longer. Something fundamental had shifted aboard the Meridian flagship, all because of one human's ability to cook and share food. And this was only the beginning. News travels fast in space, even faster when it involves something as unprecedented as the events aboard the Meridian flagship. Within days, the story of the human cook and his remarkable effect on the crew spread through the fleet like a cosmic wave. Another request from the Stellar Dawn. Officer Trull reported to Commander Vex. Their captain wants to know if we can share what did they call it? The cooking protocols. The commander stood at his observation window, watching as 3 more Meridian ships adjusted their positions to dock with the flagship. His skin still flickered gold whenever he recalled the feast from 3 days ago. And the Light Seeker reports their crew has begun researching their own ancestral food practices, Officer Mox added, scrolling through her tablet. They've discovered ancient cooking tools in their cultural archives. Jack, no longer confined to a cell, had been given quarters near the cargo bay that now permanently served as the ship's kitchen. He looked up from where he was teaching a group of alien engineers the basics of grilling. You can't rush good cooking, he explained to his eager students. That's the first rule. The second is, always share what you know. The engineers' antennae bobbed in understanding as they carefully turned their practice meals on the newly installed grills. The ship's fabrication team had worked overtime to create proper cooking equipment, improving on Jack's makeshift designs. Down in the science labs, Dr. Rill had compiled her first report on what she called the culinary effect. Her findings were causing a stir throughout the fleet's scientific community. The act of preparing and sharing food together triggers neural pathways we thought were extinct in our species, she explained to a group of visiting scientists. It's not just about nutrition anymore. It's reactivating parts of our collective consciousness. Commander Vex received another priority message, this time from Fleet Command. The highest-ranking admirals wanted to understand how a simple cooking demonstration had led to a 40% increase in crew efficiency and morale across every ship that had implemented food-sharing practices. They don't understand yet, Vex said to Jack as they reviewed the message. They're looking for a tactical advantage, but this is something deeper. Jack nodded, seasoning a new batch of protein. On Earth, we've known for thousands of years that food brings people together. Soldiers share meals before battle. Families gather for dinner. Even enemies can become friends over a good meal. The ripple effect continued to spread. Ships that had never communicated beyond official channels began exchanging recipes and cooking techniques. Crew members started bringing out family heirlooms, ancient cooking tools and spices preserved for generations without understanding their true purpose. The Lightbringer reports their engineering and security teams have started taking meals together. Officer Trull announced, sounding amazed. They say problem-solving efficiency has improved by 60%. Even the ship's design teams were affected. New vessels on the production line were being modified to include proper kitchen facilities. The concept of communal dining spaces, foreign to Meridian architecture for millennia, was being reintroduced. We're recording unprecedented levels of cooperative behavior, Dr. Rill reported. The simple act of gathering for meals is breaking down hierarchical barriers that have existed for generations. Commander Vex watched as another group of alien officers sampled their first home-cooked meal. Their skin shifted to gold, their antennae quivered with pleasure, and most importantly, they began to talk to each other as equals, not as ranks. It seems, he said to Jack, that your small cooking demonstration has started a revolution of sorts. Jack smiled as he showed a young alien crew member how to properly season food. Not a revolution, Commander, more like a remembering. Your people are just rediscovering something they once knew. That food is more than fuel. It's connection. As the days passed, more ships arrived, each eager to learn about this new way of building crew relationships. The Meridian fleet was changing, one meal at a time. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, other alien races began hearing whispers about the strange human practice that was transforming their longtime rivals into something new and unexpected. The ripples were becoming waves, and the waves would soon reach distant shores. 2 weeks after the first impromptu cooking demonstration, Jack found himself in a position no human had ever been in before. He stood before the Meridian Fleet's High Council, but instead of being on trial, he was being offered a job. The position of culinary ambassador is unprecedented, High Admiral Rex announced to the assembled council members. Their silver skin rippled with interest as the smell of Jack's latest creation wafted through the council chamber's ventilation system. "We propose," Commander Vex added, "that this becomes the foundation of a new approach to interspecies relations." The council chamber itself had been modified. The traditional Stark meeting table had been replaced with a circular dining surface, complete with cooking stations. Jack's influence was already changing centuries of Meridian tradition. Food diplomacy, Jack explained to the council, preparing a demonstration meal as he spoke, has been part of human history for thousands of years. Some of our most important treaties were signed over dinner. The council members watched, their antennae twitching in sync, as Jack expertly seasoned and grilled various proteins. The gold tint of emotional engagement spread through the room like a wave. Reports from across the fleet are unanimous. Dr. Rill presented her findings. Ships that have implemented communal dining practices show marked improvements in crew cooperation, problem-solving, and overall satisfaction. The implications for diplomatic relations are significant. High Admiral Rex sampled a piece of grilled meat, his skin immediately shifting to deep gold. "I begin to understand why Commander Vex made his unusual decision that day. This experience, it changes perspective." The effects of Jack's cooking had spread far beyond the flagship. Other alien species had begun requesting information about human food practices. The Meridian Fleet, once known for its rigid military protocol, was becoming famous for its innovative approach to diplomacy. "We've received requests from 17 different species," Officer Trull reported, checking his tablet. "They all want to participate in what they're calling the food revolution." Jack moved around the council chamber, showing various officials how to properly use the cooking equipment. The sight would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. A human freely teaching Meridian leadership about food preparation. "The key," he explained, "is understanding that cooking isn't just about the food. It's about creating connections. When people cook and eat together, barriers break down. Rank becomes less important than sharing the experience." The council chamber filled with appreciative hums as Jack's latest creation was shared. High-ranking officials who had never spoken beyond formal protocols found themselves engaged in casual conversation over their meals. "We propose establishing cooking centers on all major Meridian installations," Commander Vex announced. "With Jack as culinary ambassador, we can train others in these practices, both our own people and other species." A senior council member, her skin glowing gold, spoke up. "My own family had preserved ancient cooking tools for generations. We never understood their importance until now. Perhaps it's time we reconnected with more of our lost traditions." The formal appointment took place over a feast that combined human cooking techniques with ingredients from a dozen alien worlds. Jack's new position came with unprecedented freedom and resources. "You'll have access to a diplomatic vessel," Commander Vex explained, "modified with full kitchen facilities, of course. Your mission will be to spread this knowledge throughout known space." Jack looked around the council chamber, at the gathered alien leaders sharing food and conversation with a natural ease that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. "From prisoner to ambassador," he mused, "all because of a few good meals. You've helped us remember something important," High Admiral Rex said. "In our pursuit of efficiency, we forgot the value of sharing food and experience. This remembering may change the course of galactic relations." As the council meeting concluded, plans were already being made for the first interspecies culinary exchange program. Jack's simple cooking demonstration had evolved into something that would reshape diplomatic relations throughout known space. The human way of sharing food and friendship was about to spread across the galaxy, one meal at a time. And this was still just the beginning. 1 year after Commander Vex's unusual order, the Meridian flagship hosted a remarkable celebration. The cargo bay where it all began had been transformed into a grand dining hall, filled with representatives from 20 different species. Looking back, Commander Vex addressed the gathered crowd. What seemed like a strange decision has proven to be the most important order of my career. Jack stood at his now famous cooking station, preparing dishes that combine techniques and ingredients from across the galaxy. His position as culinary ambassador had taken him to worlds he'd never dreamed of visiting, teaching and learning new ways of bringing people together through food. The commander's wisdom, High Admiral Rex announced, wasn't in seeking military intelligence or tactical advantages. It was in recognizing that understanding comes through sharing common experiences. The gathered aliens, some tall and silver-skinned like the Meridians, others with completely different forms, all nodded in agreement. Many had their own stories about how the food revolution had changed their societies. Trade disputes that had lasted generations, Officer Trull reported, consulting his records, were resolved over shared meals. Military tensions dissolved during cooking demonstrations. The simple act of preparing and sharing food accomplished what years of formal diplomacy could not. Dr. Rill stepped forward, her skin glowing with excitement. The scientific implications have been extraordinary. We've documented the revival of dormant cultural practices across 12 species. Food preparation and sharing appear to be universal constants that we had forgotten. Commander Vex watched as aliens who had once been bitter enemies now sat together, sharing dishes and stories. His seemingly strange order had unlocked something fundamental about intelligent life in the galaxy. The humans, he observed, kept this wisdom while many of us lost it in our rush toward technological advancement. They never forgot that food is more than fuel. It is a bridge between hearts and minds. Jack moved through the gathering, showing a group of young aliens how to properly season their dishes. In the past year, he had trained hundreds of beings in the art of cooking, each going on to teach others in turn. But the most remarkable change, Officer Mox added, has been within our own fleet. She gestured to the gathered crew members, who now regularly cooked and ate together regardless of rank or position. The celebration continued as new dishes were prepared and shared. The cargo bay filled with the sounds of conversation and laughter from a dozen different species, each adding their own rediscovered food traditions to the growing galactic cuisine. Commander Vex's order, High Admiral Rex concluded, will be studied for generations as a turning point in galactic relations, not because of its military significance, but because it reminded us of something we had forgotten. Jack listened to the Admiral's words while preparing another batch of his now famous grilled proteins. From prisoner to ambassador, his journey had been as unexpected as the changes his cooking had sparked. "You know," he said to Commander Vex, who had joined him at the cooking station, "when you first ordered me to cook, I thought you were just curious about human food." The commander's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "I was looking for something deeper than military intelligence. I sought understanding. What I found was a truth that had been waiting for us all along." Around them, the celebration continued. New friendships were formed, old rivalries dissolved, and the future of galactic relations was being reshaped. All because one alien commander had given a very strange order to a human prisoner. The wisdom, Vex concluded, watching the gathered species share food and friendship, was not in the order itself, but in remembering that the simplest things often hold the deepest truths. As the stars shone through the cargo bay windows, Jack prepared another meal, continuing the tradition that had changed everything. The human practice of sharing food and fellowship was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a cornerstone of galactic diplomacy. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, other species were discovering or rediscovering the simple truth that Commander Vex had recognized. The way to understanding often begins with a shared meal and an open heart.